I'm 88 years old now, and there's one apology I've been carrying in my chest for so long that it feels heavier than my own heart. I don't say this to be forgiven. I say it because there's no one left to say it to. Most mornings, I wake up before the sun. Not because I need to. My body just does that now. The house is quiet in a way that feels permanent. Oh, doors opening. Just the low hum of the refrigerator and the sound of my own breathing, slower than it used to be. I sit at the small table by the window. Same spot every day. There's a chair across from me that hasn't been used in years. Kitchen, handwritten note. Our first apartment, 1968. When you get this old, people think your regrets are about big mistakes. Some terrible thing you did. Some loud failure. But that's not how it usually works. The worst regrets come from the things you didn't do because you thought you had time. I've had a long life. Longer than most of the people I loved. I worked hard. I showed up. I did what I was supposed to do. That's what I told myself, anyway. And for a long time, that was enough to quiet the voice inside me that said, "You're missing something." In a garden, timestamp 1975. I grew up in a house where silence was normal. My father wasn't cruel. He just wasn't present. He believed providing was the same as loving. My mother accepted that. Or maybe she just learned to live with it. I learned early that you don't talk about feelings. You prove yourself instead. You earn your place by being useful. So when I was young, I chased usefulness like it was oxygen. She always noticed small things. Timestamp March 1980. I got married in my 20s. She was warm in ways I wasn't. She laughed easily. She noticed small things. I liked that about her, though I didn't understand it. I worked long hours. Not because anyone forced me to. Because it felt responsible. Because I thought that was what love looked like from the inside. She used to ask me how my day was. I always answered with facts. Numbers. Problems solved. Things accomplished. She'd nod. Sometimes she'd wait a moment longer, like she was hoping I'd say something else. I rarely did. At the time, it didn't feel like neglect. It felt like adulthood. Timestamp June 1955. We had children. 2 of them. I was proud in a quiet way. I held them when they were small. But as they grew, so did my obligations. That's how I explained it to myself. There were school events I missed. Birthdays where I arrived late. Dinners where my mind stayed at work even though my body was at the table. Nothing dramatic. No shouting. No slammed doors. Just absence. I told myself I'd make it up later, when things slowed down, when the pressure eased. I believed that lie for decades. Candles, handwritten note, July 1978. Happy 5th. There was a moment. I remember it clearly now, though it felt unimportant then. My wife was standing at the sink. I was putting on my coat, heading out early. She said something like, "Do you ever feel like we're just passing each other?" I laughed a little. Not unkindly. I said, "That's life. It won't always be this busy." She didn't argue. That should have scared me. Always asking questions. Years passed the way years do. Quietly. Without asking permission. The children grew up and moved on. They called less. I noticed, but I also understood. At least, I told myself I did. My wife grew quieter. Not sad. Just contained. Like someone who's learned not to reach for things that won't be handed back. I never cheated. Never drank too much. Never hit anyone. By most measures, I was a good man. But goodness measured by absence of harm is a small thing. Handwritten, Sunday Pick. Timestamp 1969. The apology I can't make isn't for something I did wrong in a single moment. It's for the lifetime of moments where I chose later over now. At the time, I thought I was being patient, practical, strong. Only now do I see I was postponing love, as if it was something that wouldn't spoil. I didn't realize apologies have expiration dates. By the time I understood what I had taken for granted, the space between us had hardened. Not broken, just set. First holiday together, timestamp 1978. And then one day, she got sick. Not suddenly, slowly, like everything else. I sat by her bed and held her hand, thinner than I remembered. I wanted to say so many things, but the words felt unfamiliar in my mouth, like a language I never learned properly. I told her practical things, that the bills were handled, that the kids would be fine. She smiled at me, still gentle, still kind. She died before I ever said the apology that mattered. That's the one I can never make. Not because I didn't love her, but because I waited too long to say it out loud. Always ours. Timestamp visible. After she died, people kept telling me I was strong. They said it like it was a compliment. I nodded. I thanked them. I stood straight at the funeral and shook hands and accepted casseroles I didn't eat. From the outside, I looked like a man who had handled his life well. Inside, everything was hollow. Grief didn't arrive all at once. It came in small, embarrassing ways. I'd reach for a second cup at the table without thinking. I'd hear a sound from the other room and turn my head before remembering there was no one there. I'd catch myself forming a sentence in my mind, something ordinary, something useless, and then realize there was no one left who needed to hear it. That's when the apology started to ache. Not loudly, not like guilt, more like pressure. Afternoons, timestamp 1974. I went through her things slowly, not because I wanted to linger, but because I didn't know how to move forward. I found notes she'd written to herself, grocery lists, reminders, nothing dramatic. But there were also letters she never sent. Not to me. To herself, maybe. Or maybe to a version of me she hoped would show up someday. She wrote about waiting, about telling herself I was tired. That work was heavy. That love didn't always need words. I read those pages sitting on the floor, my back against the bed we shared for 46 years. I understood then that she hadn't left me emotionally because she didn't care. She left because she got tired of knocking. The clarity didn't come with fireworks. It came with shame so quiet it almost felt polite. Handwritten, she noticed everything. Timestamp 1980. I started replaying moments I'd ignored. Her pausing in doorways. Her asking questions she already knew the answers to. Her silence at dinner, not angry, just resigned. I used to think silence meant peace. Now I know it can also mean surrender. The children came by more often at first. They were kind. They asked how I was doing. I answered honestly, but briefly. That's how I've always been. They talked about their lives, jobs, their kids, busy schedules. I listened. I nodded. I felt proud of them. And yet, there was a distance there too. Not punishment, not resentment, just unfamiliarity. They knew me as reliable, consistent, present in the background. They didn't know me as someone who shared himself. That was my doing. I don't blame them. Busy. Timestamp 1972. One evening, my daughter asked me something simple. She said, "Did Mom ever tell you she was lonely?" I opened my mouth to answer. Nothing came out, because the truth was worse than yes or no. She showed me, and I didn't see it. That's when I realized the apology I needed to make wasn't just to my wife. It was to the life I kept postponing. I started talking to her when I was alone, out loud, not because I believed she could hear me, but because I needed to hear myself say the words. I'm sorry I was always on my way somewhere else. I'm sorry I thought being needed was the same as being present. I'm sorry I loved you quietly when you needed it spoken. Saying it didn't fix anything, but it made the truth impossible to avoid. Handwritten, July 1978. Happy 5th. Timestamp visible. Older age gives you a strange kind of honesty. There's no future version of yourself left to impress. No reputation to build. No momentum to hide behind. You're left with what you did, and what you didn't, and time, which no longer negotiates. I began to notice how often I'd used the word later in my life. Later we'll talk. Later I'll slow down. Later I'll make it up to you. Later never showed up. It turns out later is just a story we tell ourselves when now feels inconvenient. The worst part isn't that I made mistakes. It's that I made them calmly, confidently, thinking I was right. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't careless. I was absent in inches, not miles. And inches add up. Now, at this age, people ask if I have regrets. I usually say no, because this regret isn't something I want sympathy for. It's something I want understood. Love doesn't disappear all at once. It erodes when it's postponed too often. If I could make that apology now, it wouldn't be dramatic. No grand speech. No tears. I'd just sit across from her at the table and say, "I see what you were asking for. I see it now." But seeing something late doesn't bring it back. All it does is change how you sit with the rest of your days. And mine. There aren't many left. Handwritten, she always waited. Timestamp 1982. I don't know who's listening to this. I picture someone younger than me. Not young exactly. Just not here yet. Someone who still believes there's room to adjust things. Someone who still uses the word someday without thinking about it. I used to do that too. At my age, days don't stretch anymore. They stack. One on top of the other. Quiet. Predictable. You stop planning far ahead because your body doesn't like promises. Most afternoons, I sit in the same chair. The light moves across the wall. I notice it because there's nothing rushing me anymore. That would have made me uncomfortable once. Now it's all I have. I think about the apology I can't make. Not the words themselves. The timing. Apologies matter less for their content than for when they're offered. Early apologies invite closeness. Late ones just explain absence. If I had said it sooner, it wouldn't have sounded wise. It would have sounded awkward, incomplete, maybe even unnecessary. That's the tragedy of it. The right words often feel excessive until it's too late to say them. I don't tell this story to warn you. I don't believe in warnings anymore. People hear what they're ready to hear. I'm telling it because it's true. Because there's a version of me who thought he was doing everything right. Who believed responsibility was enough. who thought love could wait until the schedule cleared. That version of me wasn't a villain. He was just convinced time was loyal. It isn't. Time doesn't betray you. It just doesn't belong to you. If you love someone, they don't need your efficiency. They don't need your future plans. They don't need to be managed. They need you there while they're still asking. That's not advice. That's a memory. I wish I had understood that presence isn't something you provide later as a reward for surviving the hard years. It's the thing that makes the hard years worth surviving. Now, when I look back, I don't remember my accomplishments clearly. They blur together. Titles fade. Deadlines lose their shape. What I remember are the empty spaces, the conversations I postponed, the evenings I shortened, the moments I assumed would repeat. They didn't. People talk about being remembered. Legacy. Being proud of what you leave behind. I don't think about that much. I think about the sound of her moving around the kitchen while I pretended to read the paper. About the way she stopped asking questions because she already knew the answers I'd give. I think about how love can be patient, but not infinite. The apology I can't make is simple. I should have been there while you were still reaching. That's it. Nothing poetic. Nothing dramatic. Just late. I've made peace with many things. Aging. Loss. The quiet. But not with that. And maybe I'm not meant to. Maybe some regrets aren't meant to be resolved. Maybe they're meant to be carried, so they can be felt by someone else before it's too heavy. If this meant something to you, sit with it for a moment. Not because you should act, or change, or fix anything. Just notice who's across the table from you. Who's still asking. Who's still waiting. That's all. As for me, I'll finish my mornings at the window. I'll set one cup on the table. I'll watch the light move. And I'll hold the apology where it belongs now. With me. At the end.